They said humans were weak, soft flesh, breakable bones, no claws worth mentioning. The Galactic Council classified them as Class 7 sentience, technologically adequate, militarily irrelevant, emotionally unstable. What the Council never understood, what no species in the known universe could have predicted, was that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't hidden in their warships or buried in their genetic code. It lived in the space between a child's hand and a monster's heart. It lived in a single word that could shatter empires. This is the story of how the most feared predator in 12-star systems learned to obey a creature that couldn't even reach its knee. The Zelkaro came to Earth the way apex predators always arrive, confident, hungry, and utterly certain of their dominance. Their invasion fleet dropped from fold space above the Pacific Ocean on a Tuesday morning, 27 massive war barges that blotted out the sun across 6 time zones. Each vessel carried a full clan of Zelkaro warriors, and each warrior carried a war beast. The beasts were the real weapons. The Zelkaro were simply the ones who pointed them at prey. Commander Thexval stood on the bridge of the lead barge, his triple-jointed legs locked in the stance of anticipated victory. Behind him, through the reinforced viewing port, his personal war beast paced in its holding chamber, Krevnash, 14 feet of muscle, scale, and calculated violence. The creature's 6 eyes tracked movement with the patience of something that had never known failure, and its forearms ended in talons that could peel hull plating like fruit skin. Target analysis, Thexval clicked to his tactical officer. Multiple population centers across the primary landmasses. Defensive capabilities appear limited to chemical projectile weapons and primitive guided missiles. No shield technology detected. No energy weapons of significance. The officer's mandibles clacked with amusement. Commander, their most advanced fighters still use combustion thrust. They burn refined hydrocarbons for propulsion. Thexval felt the familiar warmth of certainty spread through his thorax. This would be easy, perhaps too easy. The Zelkararo had conquered 17 worlds in the last 40 cycles, each one more challenging than the last. The Krovan had their crystal armadas. The Besht had their planet-wide defense grid. The Torment had fought with a savagery that earned them a place in Zelkaro war songs. Humans had combustion engines and optimism. Release the first wave of war beasts, Thexval ordered. Target military installations. Standard subjugation protocol. We claim this world by nightfall. 300 war beasts dropped from the invasion fleet in specially designed pods. They hit Earth's atmosphere like meteors, their pods burning white-hot until the final moment when retro-thrusters fired and hatches blew open. The beasts emerged over every continent, creatures of nightmare given flesh and purpose, each one trained from birth to kill on command, to hunt without mercy, to fear nothing that breathed. What happened next would be discussed in xenobiology departments for the next century, analyzed by military strategists until it became doctrine, and whispered about in bars across the galaxy like a ghost story that might actually be true. The war beasts began to hesitate. It started small. A beast designated Zor. 1-7 landed outside a military base in Colorado and paused at the perimeter fence instead of crashing through it. Its handlers screamed commands through the neural link, but Zor, 1-7 tilted its massive head and sniffed the air like something was fundamentally wrong with the entire scenario. Across the planet, similar reports flooded back to the Zelkaro fleet. War beasts moving slower than optimal. War beasts breaking formation. War beasts stopping mid-charge to investigate. Smells that shouldn't have mattered. Sounds that shouldn't have registered as significant. Recalibrate the neurolinks. Thexval snapped. Something in this planet's atmosphere must be interfering with the connection. But atmospheric analysis showed nothing unusual. Earth's air was standard oxygen-nitrogen, well within tolerance ranges. The magnetic field was unremarkable. Background radiation was negligible. The war beasts were simply refusing to commit to the slaughter they'd been bred for. Krevnash shifted in his holding chamber, and Thexval felt the neural link pulse with something he'd never experienced from his beast before. Uncertainty. No, more than uncertainty. Curiosity mixed with caution, like a predator that had suddenly realized it might be walking into a trap. "What are you sensing?" Thexval muttered, more to himself than the beast. The answer came 3 minutes later when Warbeast Mod 2-3 cornered a human soldier in an alley in Tokyo. The soldier had exhausted his ammunition and stood with his back against a wall, chest heaving, waiting for death. Mach 2-3 approached with the methodical patience of something that knew its prey had nowhere to run. 4 steps away. 3 steps. 2, the soldier closed his eyes. "Hey, leave him alone." 2-3 froze, every muscle in its body locked tight. The voice had come from above, from a fire escape where a small human stood clutching a metal railing. Female, juvenile, approximately 9 solar cycles old, based on size ratio analysis. The child jumped down to the alley floor, landing with the graceless confidence of someone too young to understand mortality. She walked straight toward Mock. 2, 3, one hand outstretched. The soldier shouted something in his language, probably a warning. The child ignored him. Mock, 2-3's handlers screamed through the neural link. Kill the small one, complete the objective, fulfill your purpose. The beast's muscles bunched for the strike that would end the child in one clean motion. The girl stopped 3 feet away and looked up into Mock. 2-3's 6 eyes, you're scared, she said. Mock, 2-3, wasn't scared. Mock, 2-3, had never been scared. Fear was a concept that had been trained out of the creature before its 3rd feeding cycle. Fear was weakness. Fear was prey. But something in the child's voice made Mock. 2-3 settled back on its haunches. The girl took another step forward. Now she was close enough to touch. Close enough that Mock, 2-3, could end her existence with a twitch of one talon. It's okay, the child whispered. You don't have to hurt anyone. Across the neural link, Mook, 2-3's handlers felt something unprecedented. The beast was listening to someone who wasn't Zalcaro. Listening and considering and weighing options instead of executing commands. The girl reached up and placed her hand on Mock 2-3's armored chest, right over where its primary heart beat a rhythm of confusion and something else, something the Zalcaro language had no word for, because they had never needed one. Good boy, the child said. Mock 2-3 lowered its head. The handlers severed the neural link in panic, but it was too late. The warbeast sat down in the alley, all 4 arms folding across its chest in a posture of rest, and refused to move even when the emergency override signals fired directly into its neural cortex. The soldier stared. The child smiled and scratched behind one of Mock 2-3's auditory ridges. The beast made a sound that no Zalcaro had ever heard from their weapons before, a low, rumbling purr of contentment. This scene repeated 47 times across Earth in the first hour of invasion. 47 warbeasts encountering human children. 47 times the beasts chose disobedience over duty, chose curious small voices over the screaming of their masters. Thexwell watched the reports flood his command console and felt his certainty crumble into something he'd never experienced in 17 successful conquests. Doubt. Recall all warbeasts immediately, he ordered. Full retrieval. I want every single beast back in its chamber within the hour. Commander, we can still achieve subjugation with conventional weapons, our plasma batteries alone. Did I ask for alternatives? Thexwell's voice carried the edge that ended debates. Retrieve the world. Beasts. They managed to recover 263 of the 300 deployed warbeasts. The remaining 37 refused recall commands entirely. Tracking data showed them moving away from combat zones, following human children who had somehow claimed them, with nothing more than gentle hands and soft words. Krevnash watched Thexval through the holding chamber's transparent barrier, and the commander felt his beasts question through their link as clearly as if it had been spoken. Why are we here? It was the wrong question for a weapon to ask. The Zelkaro fleet held position in high orbit while Thexval convened an emergency session with the clan leaders. 17 faces appeared on holographic displays around the war room. 17 commanders who had conquered worlds and broken civilizations. The humans have some form of psychic control, suggested Vaktha, commander of the second barge, a latent ability that affects neural patterns. We should withdraw and return with psychic shielding. Our scans show no psychic emissions, countered Reshka. This is something else, something we don't have classification for. They're manipulating our beasts through chemical signals, offered another commander. Pheromones or airborne compounds that trigger docility responses. Thexval had listened to 6 more theories before he silenced them all with a raised foreclaw. We're missing the obvious, he said quietly. Our warbeasts are predators, apex hunters. We've spent generations breeding and training them to kill without hesitation. Yes, Vektar said impatiently. That's precisely why this human interference is so... But what do all apex predators have in common? Thexval interrupted. Throughout every ecosystem we've studied, every world we've conquered, what is the one universal trait of dominant hunters? The holographic faces stared back at him in confused silence. They protect their young, Thexval said, and they recognize the young of other species as fundamentally non-threatening. It's a survival mechanism. Juvenile creatures trigger nurturing instincts rather than predatory ones. Across the galaxy this pattern holds true. Understanding rippled through the war room like a shockwave. The human juveniles, Hreshka breathed. They're triggering protective responses in our beasts. More than that, Thexval said. The humans are doing something we never considered. They're treating our weapons as if they were companions. As if they were... He struggled for the concept. Friends. The word hung in the air like a confession of weakness. Vektar's mandibles clicked with disgust. Then we removed the juveniles from the equation. Target adult populations exclusively. The war beasts will have no psychological barriers against... No. Thexvile's voice cut through the suggestion like a blade. We don't slaughter children to achieve victory. The Zelkaro have never needed to stoop to such tactics, and I won't set that precedent now. Then what do you propose? Vekthar challenged. We've deployed our primary weapons, and they've been neutralized by small humans with soft words. Do we simply abandon this conquest? Return to the council and report failure because we couldn't overcome creatures that barely reach our thorax in height? Texval looked at Krevnash, pacing in the holding chamber with that new uncertainty in every movement. His beast, his weapon, his responsibility. I'm going down there, Thexval said. Personally, with Krevnash. I want to see this phenomenon firsthand. Commander, I'm going, Thexval repeated. And I'm going to understand what we're actually dealing with before we make any further strategic decisions. Because right now we don't even know what we're fighting. The council dissolved into arguments and protests, but Thexval had already made his decision. Sometimes you had to see the battlefield yourself to understand why you were losing. He just didn't know yet that he'd already lost. The landing pod touched down in a residential area outside what humans called Seattle. Thexval had chosen the location deliberately, far from military installations, deep in civilian territory, where he could observe human behavior without the complications of armed resistance. Krevnash emerged from the pod first, moving with the controlled wariness of a predator in unfamiliar territory. The beast's 6 eyes scanned the quiet street, the houses with their strange peaked roofs, the wheeled vehicles sitting dormant in designated spaces. Morning light filtered through clouds that smelled of moisture and growing things. Thexval followed his beast down the ramp, his armor sealed and weapons ready but not raised. This was observation, not combat. They stood in the middle of the street for 30 seconds before the humans began to react. Doors opened. Faces appeared in windows. Thexval expected panic, screaming, the chaos of prey confronted with predators. Instead, he heard a voice from his left. Mom, look, it's like the ones on the news. A human child, male, approximately 7 cycles old, ran down the steps of a nearby house before his parent could stop him. The adult human shouted something, fear evident in her tone, but the child had already covered half the distance to Krevnash. The beast lowered into a defensive crouch, and Thexval felt the neural link pulse with conflicting commands. Threat assessment, target acquisition, protect the commander, but also curiosity. That same damned curiosity that had infected every war beast that had encountered these small humans. The child slowed as he approached, some survival instinct finally kicking in, but he didn't retreat. He stood 5 feet from Krevnash and tilted his head with the fearless analysis of the very young. You're really big? The child observed. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? Krevnash tilted its head in mirror of the child's gesture. Because on TV they said you were here to hurt people, the child continued, but you don't look mean. You look confused. Texval felt the neural link stutter. The child had identified Krevnash's emotional state with more accuracy than most Zelkaro handlers could manage. The adult human had reached the child now, hands grabbing the small shoulders to pull him back. Ethan, get away from that thing right now. But Mom! Now! The child allowed himself to be dragged backward, but his eyes never left Krevnash. The beast watched him go with what Thexval could only describe as disappointment. More humans emerged from their dwellings now, some clutching weapons, those primitive projectile devices, others simply watching with the wary tension of prey trying to decide between flight and fight. An elderly human male approached from the right, moving with the careful dignity of advanced age. He held no weapons. His hands were empty and raised in what Thexval recognized as a universal gesture of non-aggression. I'm guessing you're in charge, the old human said, looking at Thexval. You're wearing the fancy armor and you've got the biggest, whatever that is. He nodded toward Krevnash. Thexville activated his translator unit. I am Commander Thexval of the Zelkaro First Fleet. This is my warbeast, Krevnash. Warbeast, the old human repeated. That's what you call it. We'd probably call it a pet or a companion. Maybe a friend, if it was in a better mood. It is not a pet. It is a weapon, bred for combat, trained for conquest. The old human studied Krevnash with the assessing eye of someone who had seen much in his long life. Maybe that's what you made it to be. Doesn't mean that's what it wants to be. Creatures don't have wants, Thexval said. They have instincts and conditioning. Tell that to my dog, the old human said. Spent 8 years training him to be a guard dog. Know what he does when someone tries to break in? He brings them his favorite toy and hopes they'll play fetch. Despite himself, despite the situation, despite everything he knew about proper military protocol, Thexval felt something in his thorax that might have been amusement. More humans gathered now, a crowd forming at a safe distance. Thexville noted the composition. Approximately 30% children, the rest adults of varying ages. Some of the children pressed forward despite parental restraints, drawn to Krevnash with the magnetic pull of the young toward anything large and mysterious. One small human, female, no more than 4 cycles old, broke free from her guardian and ran straight toward the war beast with the fearless momentum of someone too young to have learned about consequences. 3 things happened simultaneously. The child's mother screamed. Thexval reached for his weapon. Krevnash lowered itself flat to the ground and extended one massive arm toward the child in a gesture of offering. The little girl stopped, looked at the offered arm, and climbed onto it like it was playground equipment. Krevnash lifted her gently, carefully, with a precision that would have impressed Thexval if he wasn't too busy experiencing something close to existential horror. His war beast, his perfectly trained killing machine, was now holding a human child like she was made of spun glass and starlight. The girl giggled and patted Krevnash's arm and head. "Puppy," she declared with the absolute certainty of the very young. "That is not a puppy," Thexval said weakly. "That is 14,000 pounds of bioengineered predator." "Puppy," the girl repeated, more firmly this time, as if saying it with enough conviction would make it true. Krevnash made that sound again, that purring rumble that Thexval had heard in the reports but never thought to hear from his own beast. The Neuralink flooded with emotion that shouldn't exist in a weapon. Protectiveness, contentment, affection. The child's mother had reached them now, torn between terror and relief. "Mia, sweetie, we need to—" "Puppy nice," Mia announced. "Puppy, my friend." Thexval watched his conquest crumble around him, watched it die not with explosions and glory but with a child's laughter and a beast's gentle touch. The crowd of humans pressed closer now, fear giving way to curiosity. And Thexval realized that he had crossed some invisible line into territory he had no maps for. The old human who had spoken before stepped closer to Thexval. "You came here to conquer us," he said. "It wasn't a question. That was the plan," Thexval admitted. "And now?" Thexval looked at Krevnash, at the small human child sitting contentedly in his beast's arms, at the crowd of humans who were looking at his weapon of war like it was something to be befriended rather than feared. "Now," Thexval said slowly, "I have absolutely no idea what happens now. The galaxy keeps records. Every civilization does. Births, deaths, treaties, wars. But there's one type of record that appears in every database across known space, written in 1,000 different languages, all saying the same thing. Do not engage humanity in direct conflict. Not because humans are invincible, not because their weapons are unstoppable, but because of what happens after. Because 37 species have challenged humanity in the last 2 centuries, and 37 species have simply ceased to exist. No dramatic battles, no conquered worlds. Just silence where civilizations used to be. The Galactic Council calls it coincidence. Historians call it pattern. But the species who share borders with human space? They call it a warning. This is the story of the 38th challenge, and why it became the last. Ambassador Kelrix of the Vaughn Collective had exactly 12 minutes to live, but he didn't know it yet. He stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of righteous indignation, his voice carrying across the amphitheater with the practiced authority of someone who had never faced real consequences. "For 3 generations we have tolerated humanity's expansion," Kelrix declared, his primary throat sac inflating to amplify his words. "They spread across systems like a plague, claiming worlds that by ancient right belong to elder species. They ignore our borders, violate our trade agreements, and worst of all," he paused for effect, "they refuse to acknowledge our cultural superiority." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. 200 species occupied the tiered seating of the council chamber, representing civilizations that spanned from the galactic core to the outer rim. Most had learned to coexist with humanity. Some even called humans allies. But the Vaughn Collective was young, aggressive, and had never learned the value of reading history. The human delegation sat in their assigned section, a small group of 5 individuals who looked remarkably unimpressed by Kelix's speech. Their leader, Ambassador Sarah Chen, examined her fingernails with the detached interest of someone waiting for a boring lecture to end. "The Vaughn Collective hereby issues formal challenge to the human species," Kelix continued. "We claim the Tertian Belt, all 17 systems, as rightful Vaughn territory. We demand immediate human withdrawal within 30 solar rotations. Failure to comply will be considered an act of war." The chamber fell silent. Chen looked up from her fingernails. "No." Kelix's throat sac deflated slightly. "I beg your pardon?" "I said no," Chen stood, her movements casual, unhurried. The Tertian Belt has been human territory for 40 years. We have settlements, infrastructure, trade routes. You're demanding we abandon 14 million citizens because you decided you want those systems. So, no, we decline. This is not a negotiation. Kellix's voice cracked with fury. This is a formal challenge ancient protocol demands. Ancient protocol can demand whatever it wants. Chen interrupted. We're still saying no. Is there anything else on today's agenda, or can we all go to lunch? The presiding officer, a Matherian known for diplomatic neutrality, raised one crystalline appendage. Ambassador Chen, the Vone Collective has issued challenge under the Fourth Accord. According to Council law, we have the right to refuse challenges we consider frivolous, Chen said. This is frivolous. The Vane want our systems because they're resource-rich and strategically positioned. That's not ancient right, that's opportunistic greed. Kellix took 3 steps toward the human delegation, his secondary arms reaching for the ceremonial weapons that hung at his sides. You dare insult the Vone Collective? You dare refuse our lawful challenge? I just did, Chen said. Twice, actually. Would you like me to say it slower? What happened next would be analyzed by xenopsychologists for decades. Kerrix drew his weapons, 2 curved blades that gleamed under the chamber's lights. Drawing weapons in the council chamber was forbidden, a violation so severe that it carried automatic expulsion from the council and economic sanctions. But Kellix was beyond caring about protocols now. His species had a saying, honor demands blood when words fail. He lunged toward Chen with the speed of a trained Vone warrior, blades aimed for her thorax, fully intending to kill the human ambassador in front of 200 species and prove that humanity could bleed like anyone else. He made it exactly 4 steps before he collapsed. The blades clattered on the marble floor. Kellix gasped, his forearms clutching at his chest as his respiratory system seized. His eyes, all 6 of them, went wide with shock and terror. Chen hadn't moved. Neither had any other human in the delegation. Kerrix tried to speak, tried to demand what poison they'd used, what weapon, what treachery. But his throat sac had closed completely. He fell forward, body convulsing, and died on the council chamber floor 37 seconds after drawing his weapons. The chamber erupted in chaos. Security forces rushed forward. Medical teams surrounded Kellix's body. Delegates shouted accusations, demands, questions. Through it all, Chen stood perfectly still, her expression neutral, her hands clearly empty of weapons. The Matherian officer slammed their gavel equivalent 3 times, the sound cutting through the noise like a blade. Order! I will have order. The chaos subsided into tense silence. Ambassador Chen, the officer said carefully, can you explain what just occurred? Ambassador Kerrix appears to have suffered some form of medical emergency, Chen said. I'm not a doctor, but it looked like cardiac arrest, or whatever the Vone equivalent is. He was perfectly healthy 30 seconds ago, someone shouted from the Vone delegation section. This was an attack. An attack using what? Chen spread her hands. I'm standing 15 feet away from him. No one on my delegation moved. We have no weapons. Council sensors would have detected any energy discharge, any projectile, any chemical agent. The Matherian officer consulted with their security chief, a whispered conversation that took exactly 90 seconds. When they returned their attention to the chamber, their crystalline face was troubled. Sensors detect no evidence of any weapon deployment, the officer announced. No energy signatures, no foreign substances in the air, no projectiles. As far as our technology can determine, Ambassador Kellix died of natural causes. Natural causes? The Vone delegation was on their feet now, all 17 of them. He was 30 cycles old, prime of his life, and he dies the moment he challenges humanity? This is murder. Chen's expression didn't change. The Vone Collective has my condolences on your loss. I'm sure the medical examination will provide answers. But the medical examination provided nothing. Kerrix's body showed all the signs of catastrophic system failure, but no cause. No poison, no disease, no injury. Every organ had simply stopped functioning at the same moment, as if someone had flipped a switch and turned off his biology. The Vone delegation withdrew from the council that same day, carrying Kerrix's body and promising retribution. 3 days later, the Vone Collective issued a formal declaration of war against humanity. 2 weeks after that, the first Vane attack fleet assembled at the edge of the Tertian Belt. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Diplomatic Station 7 and watched the Vane fleet hold position just outside human-controlled space. 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The largest military force the Vone had ever assembled. They're actually doing it, said Marcus Webb, her senior aide. They're going to attack. They believe they have to, Chen said. Kellex died, they think we killed him, and their honor code demands response. Classic escalation pattern. Did we kill him? Chen turned to look at Webb. He'd been her aide for 6 years, had survived 4 diplomatic crises and 2 attempted assassinations. He'd earned the right to ask direct questions. Do you really want to know the answer to that? Chen asked. Webb considered this for a long moment. No, he finally said. No, I don't think I do. Smart man. They watched the Vine fleet in silence for a while. Chen could see the smaller craft moving between the capital ships, the running lights marking supply transfers and personnel movements. The Vone were preparing for a prolonged campaign, which meant they expected human resistance. They had no idea what was actually coming. The Council is demanding we negotiate, Webb said. Half the member species are threatening sanctions if we don't accept mediation. Let them threaten, Chen said. The Vone declared war. We didn't choose this, but we could end it. One concession, maybe give them 2 or 3 systems in the Tertian belt, and they'd call it a victory. And then the next species would see that humanity backs down when threatened, Chen said. And then we'd be fighting a new war every 6 months. No, the Voan made their choice. So what happens now? Chen checked her timepiece. Now we wait. The Von fleet will cross into the Tertian belt in approximately 4 hours. They'll target our colony on Tertian Prime, try to take it quickly to demonstrate their strength. And we defend it? We don't have to. Webb frowned. I don't understand. You will, Chen said. In about 4 hours and 20 minutes. The Von fleet crossed into human territory at exactly 0400 station time. Admiral Greth, commander of the invasion force, stood on the bridge of the flagship Vengeance of Honor and watched the tactical display as his ships penetrated deeper into the Tertian belt. No resistance, no human ships rising to meet them. No defense platforms activating. Just empty space and distant colonies that seemed completely unaware of the military force bearing down on them. This is too easy, said his tactical officer. The humans must know we're here. Why aren't they responding? Because they're weak, Greth said, though he didn't quite believe it. They've grown soft in their prosperity. They thought words would protect them. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Tertian Prime. It's on all frequencies, repeating loop. Play it. A human voice filled the bridge. Female, calm, speaking in perfect Vone language. To the Vone Collective Fleet, this is Governor Martinez of Tertian Prime. We are aware of your approach and your declared intentions. I am authorized to inform you that you are making a mistake. You have one opportunity to withdraw. If you proceed with hostile action, the consequences will be absolute. This is your only warning. Greth's secondary mouth opened in what the Vaughn considered a smile. Consequences. They threaten us with consequences. Communications, send response. The Vaughn Collective does not negotiate with cowards. We are coming. The fleet accelerated toward Tertian Prime. They made it exactly 17 minutes before the ship started dying. It began with the Righteous Fury, a cruiser on the fleet's outer edge. The ship's commander was conducting a routine systems check when every screen on his bridge went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, then failed. Backup systems engaged, then died. Within 30 seconds, the Righteous Fury was a dead hulk floating in space, all power gone, life support offline, crew trapped in corridors that were rapidly running out of air. While Admiral Greth was still trying to understand what had happened to the Righteous Fury, 6 more ships went dark. Then 12, then 37. Evasive maneuvers, Greth shouted. All ships scatter. We're under attack. Sir, sensors detect no weapons fire, no missiles, no energy beams, nothing. The ships are just stopping. Greth pulled up the tactical display, watching in horror as ship after ship winked out. Not destroyed, not damaged, just dead. As if someone was walking through his fleet and turning off the lights, one by one. Full retreat, all ships fall back to. The bridge lights died. Greth felt his command chair lose power beneath him, felt the comfortable hum of the ship's engines fade to nothing. Emergency protocols should have engaged. Backup systems should have activated. But there was only darkness and silence. Through the viewport, Greth could see other ships going dark, their running lights dying, their engines shutting down. 300 warships, the pride of the Vone Collective, reduced to floating coffins in a matter of minutes. The last thing Greth heard before his communicator died was Governor Martinez's voice, still broadcasting on that repeating loop. This is your only warning. Then the silence was absolute. Chen received the report 6 hours later. The Vaughn fleet had been completely disabled. No casualties reported yet, since the ship's emergency oxygen supplies would last another 48 hours, but every single vessel was dead in space. Human recovery ships were already en route to evacuate the Vaughn crews before their air ran out. How? Webb asked. How did we do it? Chen poured herself a cup of coffee, took a sip, and considered how much to tell him. "The Vaughn make good ships," she finally said. "Very good ships, actually. But like most species, they rely heavily on integrated computer systems. Navigation, weapons, life support, everything connected to a central network for efficiency. And we hacked their network?" "We didn't need to hack anything," Chen said. "The Vaughn use Calrian processors in their ships, standard across most of the galaxy, very reliable, very powerful. Humanity helped Calria develop those processors 40 years ago. We suggested some design improvements, efficiency upgrades. The Calrians were grateful for the help." Webb's face went pale. "You put backdoors in the processors. We prefer to call them emergency safety features," Chen said. "The Carians never knew, of course. Neither did any of the 73 species who use those processors in their military hardware. But yes, we can shut down any ship, any weapon, any computer system that uses Calrian technology. Remotely, instantly, completely. That's terrifying. That's survival," Chen corrected. "Humanity learned a long time ago that we can't outfight most species. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most numerous. But we're patient and we're thorough, and we think very, very long term. So the Vaughn fleet is completely disabled and will remain that way until we decide otherwise. We'll evacuate their crews, provide medical care, and return them to Vaughn space with their ships. No casualties, no destroyed vessels. Just a very clear demonstration of capability." Webb sat down heavily. "The other species, the 37 that challenged us and vanished. Did they..." "Different methods," Chen said. "Different approaches for different threats. But yes, they all learned the same lesson. Challenging humanity directly is a mistake you only make once. But they vanished. Those civilizations are gone." Chen's expression went cold. They made their choices. Some accepted defeat and withdrew peacefully. Others kept pushing, kept attacking, kept trying to prove they could beat us. Those are the ones that vanished. Not because we destroyed them, but because we removed our protection. Protection? The galaxy is dangerous, Marcus. There are things out there that make the Vaughn look like children playing with toys. Humanity has been fighting those things for 2 centuries, keeping them at bay, protecting the younger species from threats they don't even know exist. But when a species attacks us, when they make it clear they consider us enemies, we stop protecting them, and nature takes its course. Webb looked like he wanted to ask more questions, but something in Chen's expression stopped him. "The Vaughn Collective has a choice now," Chen continued. "They can accept what happened, make peace, and join the community of species that coexist with humanity. Or they can keep fighting, keep pushing, keep trying to prove they're stronger than us. And if they choose to keep fighting," Chen finished her coffee, "then in a few years someone will ask whatever happened to the Vaughn Collective, and there won't be a good answer. Just another civilization that challenged humanity and vanished." On the Vaughn homeworld of Kellex Prime, named for the very ambassador who had started this war, the Council of Clans met in emergency session. Reports from the disabled fleet had finally reached home through secondary channels, and what they described seemed impossible. 300 ships, clan leader Vexus said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "Our entire first fleet. Disabled in minutes without a shot fired. The humans claim it was a defensive action," another clan leader said. "They're offering to return our crews and our ships if we agree to cease hostilities and accept their demands for the Tertian belt." Vexus added bitterly, "Surrender our claim, acknowledge their territory, and withdraw our challenge." "What choice do we have?" a younger clan leader asked. "They've demonstrated they can shut down our entire military with the press of a button. If we continue this war, if we surrender now, we prove to the entire galaxy that the Vaughn Collective backs down when threatened." Vexus slammed his primary hand on the council table. Our honor demands we survive," the younger clan leader interrupted. "I've been reading the histories, the archives from the Galactic Council. Do you know how many species have challenged humanity in the last 200 years? I don't care about 37, the younger leader continued. 37 species issued formal challenges to humanity. Military confrontations, territorial disputes, trade wars. Do you know how many of those species still exist? The council chamber fell silent. 0, the younger leader said quietly. Every single species that challenged humanity is gone. Not conquered, not subjugated. Just gone. Their worlds are empty. Their colonies are abandoned. Their civilizations have ceased to exist. Coincidence, Vexus said, but his voice lacked conviction. 37 coincidences? 37 species that all mysteriously vanished after challenging the same opponent? The younger leader activated a holographic display showing a map of known space. Look at this. Every single vanished civilization was located near human territory. Every single one issued formal challenge before disappearing, and every single one ignored warnings to stand down. What are you saying? I'm saying humanity doesn't conquer. They don't invade. They don't need to. They just remove whatever is protecting us from the real threats out there, and those threats do the rest. That's speculation, another clan leader said. We have no proof. We have 37 empty civilizations as proof. The younger leader's voice cracked with frustration. We have our entire First Fleet floating dead in space as proof. How much more evidence do we need? Vexus stood, his forearms spread wide. So we surrender. We accept their terms, abandon our claim, and live with the shame of backing down to a species younger than our oldest clans. We live, the younger leader said simply. That's what matters. We live. The vote was closer than it should have been, but wisdom prevailed over pride. The Vone Collective agreed to humanity's terms: complete withdrawal from the Tertian Belt, recognition of human territorial claims, and a formal apology to be delivered to the Galactic Council. 3 days later, human ships returned the disabled Vone fleet to their home system. Every crew member was alive and healthy. Every ship was fully functional again, as if the shutdown had never happened. The Vone crews reported being treated with courtesy and respect during their brief captivity. Some even mentioned human engineers helping repair minor damage to Vone vessels that had nothing to do with the conflict. It was this last detail that troubled Vexus most. Humanity had shut down their entire fleet, proven they could destroy the Vone Collective without firing a shot, and then treated their defeated enemies with kindness. It was the behavior of a species that had nothing to prove and nothing to fear. On Diplomatic Station 7, Chen watched the Vone fleet depart human space and allowed herself a small smile. Think they learned the lesson? Webb asked. Some of them did, Chen said. The young clan leader who spoke up during their council session, he understood. Give him a few years and he'll be leading the Vone Collective. When that happens, they'll be good neighbors. And the ones who didn't learn, time will teach them. Or it won't, and they'll become number 38 on the list. Webb pulled up the classified file on his tablet, the one that listed all 37 vanished civilizations. Can I ask you something? You can ask, Chen said. I might not answer. These species that vanished, what really happened to them? What are we protecting the galaxy from? Chen was quiet for a long time, staring out at the stars. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost sad. There are things between the stars, Marcus. Old things. Hungry things. Most of the galaxy doesn't know they exist because humanity has been keeping them contained for 2 centuries. We found them out there, in the dark spaces where no one else had thought to look, and we realized they were going to come for everyone eventually. So we stopped them? We're still stopping them, Chen corrected. Every day, every hour. Humanity has more ships fighting that war than we have in all our territorial fleets combined. Ships no one else knows about, fighting battles no one else sees, dying in silence to protect a galaxy that thinks we're the threat. And the vanished civilizations, we offered them the same deal we offer everyone. Join us, work with us, help us hold the line. Most species accept, but some, like those 37, decided they'd rather fight us than trust us. So we stopped protecting them specifically, pulled our ships from their sectors, let the darkness find them. That's horrible? Cruel? Necessary? Chen turned to face him. All of the above, probably. But humanity learned a long time ago that we can't save everyone. We can only save those who want to be saved. The ones who attack us, who waste our resources on pointless conflicts, who demand we prove ourselves over and over, we don't have time for them anymore. The real war is too important. Webb looked at the star map, at all the empty spaces where civilizations used to be. Does the Council know about the things you're fighting? Some of them suspect. Most prefer not to ask questions they don't want answered. Chen closed the file on her screen. The Vone will join us eventually. They're aggressive, but they're not stupid. Once they understand what's really at stake, they'll fall in line. And if they don't, Chen's smile didn't reach her eyes. Then they'll vanish, and in 100 years some young species will look at the records and wonder whatever happened to the Vone Collective. And the answer will be the same answer it always is. They challenged humanity and learned why that's a mistake you only make once. The stars burned in the viewport, cold and distant, and full of secrets that most species would never know. Humanity had chosen to bear that burden alone, to fight the war that everyone else was too afraid to acknowledge. And if that meant occasionally letting a civilization fall to prove a point, if it meant being seen as the dangerous ones, the unpredictable ones, the species you didn't challenge, well, Chen thought someone had to do the job. Someone had to stand between the light and the darkness, and humanity had proven, 37 times over, that they were willing to pay the price, even if that price was counted in vanished civilizations and uncomfortable questions that could never be fully answered. The Von would make 38, or they would make peace. Either way, the message would be clear. Anyone who dared challenge humanity vanished. It was a lie, of course, but it was a useful lie. And in the cold mathematics of survival, useful lies were sometimes all that kept the galaxy from tearing itself apart. Humanity reveals its ultimate warship, even the ancients tremble. HFY Sci-Fi Story.